Well, thanks for joining me for today's Bible reading. Today I'm reading April 29th and 2 Kings 23 to 25. That's the last section of the 2 Kings. So we'll be finishing that and starting First Chronicles tomorrow, First and Second Chronicles. So congratulations if you've made it this far with me through the Bible. And if you didn't start at the beginning in January, just stay with it till this time next year and you'll have read through your Bible in a year in 15 to 30, less than 30 minutes a day. And I think you could safely say that about three-quarters of the Bible is Old Testament and a quarter the New. And I don't guess I have a favorite. I love them both. I think it's crucially important to read both of them, not just one or the other. What do they say in the New Testament is the Old Testament revealed, and the Old Testament is the New Testament concealed. And I probably said that backwards. So yeah, it's about three-quarters to a quarter, I think, because I measured it. This book, this World English Bible that I ordered, the pages are kind of falling out and it's new, fairly new, but I knew that after reading the reviews. There are only a couple printed versions of this Bible. So I knew it may not be the best quality, but I wanted a hard copy one so I could write in it. And so I measured it so I could order some small 3-ring binders to fit it in. And since there are not any that fit the whole thing that I could find, I had to get two. So I found a 1.5 inch and a 1/2 inch binder. So 1.5 for the Old Testament. So yeah, we're making our way through. It's a good thing. Let's see. Chapter 23, verse 1. The king sent, and they gathered to him all the elders of Judah and of Jerusalem. The king went up to Yahweh's house, and all the men of Judah and all the inhabitants of Jerusalem, which Manasseh had provoked him. That doesn't sound right. No, I read the wrong column. It says, all the inhabitants of Jerusalem with him, with the priests, the prophets, and all the people, both small and great. And he read in their hearing all the words of the book of the covenant, which was found in Yahweh's house. Now remember, they had gotten so bad off, this was from yesterday's reading, that they didn't even know God's word. To me, it was like the dark ages for them, right? The word of God had fallen away, trampled underfoot. There's a verse that says, truth lies fallen in the streets. And so here's the word of God somewhere calling out and everyone just walking by and ignoring it. So that's what was happening. And they found a copy of it. And so now Hezekiah is going to read it. Is this Hezekiah? Gosh, I don't remember, honestly. I think it was Josiah, when Josiah became king. I'd have to go back and check. Sorry about that. I don't remember. But anyway, they brought it to the king, and now the king was astounded. And so he's calling everyone before him, and he's going to read it out loud to them. So it says, he read in their hearing all the words of the book of the covenant, which was found in Yahweh's house. The king stood by the pillar and made a covenant before Yahweh to walk after Yahweh and to keep his commandments, his testimonies, and his statutes with all his heart and all his soul, to confirm the words of this covenant that were written in the book. And all the people agreed to the covenant. So he was shocked. He said he literally tore his clothes and humbled himself and repented because he realized after he heard they found the book and brought it to him and read it to him that they had brought a curse on themselves. They had brought trouble on themselves. So, pretty smart guy. He immediately amended his ways. Verse 4. The king commanded Hilkiah, the high priest, and the priests of the second order, and the keepers of the threshold to bring out of Yahweh's temple all the vessels that were made for Baal, for Ashtoreth, and for all the army of the sky. There's that term, army of the sky, again. Now, I looked that up yesterday, and it's talking about the hosts. Hold on a sec. So it's talking about the hosts of heaven, and even in a couple places it calls them the starry hosts. You can look that up. There were a few more terms I found, or at least one more, but I'm not remembering it right now. But how interesting that in this version it refers to them as the army of the sky, army of the sky. And as far as I know, that is those are the fallen angels, and they would have these temples for Baal and Asherah and the Asherah poles and the sacrifices, including human sacrifice and child sacrifice, to appease these gods. They worship them as gods, and these evil angels demanded these sacrifices. So it was the army of the sky. And I'm sure, we see in the Bible where angels can make themselves visible, right? Angels appeared to Joseph and Mary, angels appeared to multiple people throughout scripture. And we also see how Jesus could appear and disappear and so on and so forth. And so these dark angels can do the same thing. Um, assume, assumably. Anyway, so that's what was going on here. So, we need to recognize that and not just glaze over reading these parts. So let me back up a little bit. The king commanded Hilkiah the high priest and the priests of the second order and keepers of the threshold to bring out of Yahweh's temple all the vessels that were made for Baal and Asherah and for the army of the sky, and he burned them outside Jerusalem in the fields of the Kidron and carried their ashes to Bethel. He got rid of the idolatrous priests whom the kings of Judah had ordained to burn incense in the high places in the cities of Judah and in the places around Jerusalem, those also who burned incense to Baal, to the sun and to the moon and to the planets and to all the army of the sky. So they worshiped the planets and the moon and the sun also. He brought out the Asherah from Yahweh's house outside of Jerusalem to the brook of Kidron and burned it at the brook of Kidron and beat it to dust and cast its dust on the graves of the common people. He broke down the houses of the male shrine prostitutes that were in Yahweh's house, where the women wove hangings for the Ashtoreth. He brought all the priests out of the cities of Judah and defiled the high priests where the priests had burned incense from Geba to Beersheba, and he broke down the high places of the gates that were at the entrance of the gate of Joshua the governor of the city, which were on a man's left at the gate of the city. Nevertheless, the priests of the high places didn't come up to Yahweh's altar in Jerusalem, but they ate unleavened bread among their brothers. He defiled Topheth, which is in the valley of the children of Hinnom, that no man might make his son or daughter to pass through the fire to Molech. He took away the horses that the kings of Judah had given to the sun, S-U-N, at the entrance of Yahweh's house, by the room of Nathan Melech the officer, who was in the court, and he burned the chariots of the sun with fire. So he didn't want any detestable thing around him, not even the ashes. The king broke down the altars that were on the roof of the upper room of Ahaz, which the kings of Judah had made, and the altars which Manasseh had made in the two courts of Yahweh's house, and beat them down from there, and cast their dust into the brook Kidron. The king defiled the high places that were before Jerusalem, which were on the right hand of the mountain of corruption, which Solomon the king of Israel had built for Ashtoreth, the abomination of the Sidonians, and for Chemosh, the abomination of Moab, and for Milcom, the abomination of the children of Ammon. Now, notice it's always high places, right? You see all the different places around the world, including some of the so-called wonders of the world that are high, ziggurat type things, like the Tower of Babel was, the pyramids, various other places where they have the large stones. Those are all for sacrifices. They're all over the world. That's what these high places were, mounds. They had mounds for sacrifices. Why they always wanted to get up high, off the earth into the air, I don't know. Verse 14. He broke in pieces the pillars, cut down the Asherah poles, and filled the places with men's bones. Moreover, the altar that was at Bethel in the high place, which Jeroboam the son of Nebat, who made Israel to sin, there he goes dissing on Jeroboam again. I mean, I never noticed this in all my other times of reading how many times this phrase was repeated. And it's like, if I can be so casual in saying this, it's like God just won't let it go. This was the thing that started this whole downward spiral, this initiation, or how do I say that? This king at the beginning of this line of descent, and descent in two ways, his descendants, but also they all came just getting continually worse with each one, with rare exception. So there he is again. The high place which Jeroboam the son of Nebat, who made Israel to sin, had made, even that altar in the high place he broke down, and he burned the high place, and beat it to dust, and burned the Asherah. As Josiah turned himself, he spied the tombs that were there in the mountain, and he sent and took the bones out of the tombs, and burned them on the altar, and defiled it according to Yahweh's word, which the man of God proclaimed, who proclaimed these things. Then he said, "What monument is that I see?" The men of the city told him, "It is the tomb of the man of God who came from Judah and proclaimed these things that you have done against the altar of Bethel." He said, "Let him be, let no one move his bones." So they let his bones alone with the bones of the prophet who came out of Samaria. All the houses also of the high places that were in the cities of Samaria, which the kings of Israel had made to provoke Yahweh to anger, Josiah, see, so it was Josiah, took away and did to them according to all the acts that he had done in Bethel. So he's respecting the things that God respects and detesting the things that God detests. So he left the prophets' bones alone to honor them. This should be instructive to us in our lives. We can apply that. He killed all the priests. Not that we need to go around killing uh, the priests of other religions, but we can remove a lot of things out of our life that don't need to be there that are displeasing to God, right? He killed all the priests of the high places that were there on the altars and burned men's houses on them. He returned to Jerusalem. The king commanded all the people, saying, "Keep the Passover of Yahweh your God, as it is written in this book of the covenant." Surely there was not kept a Passover from the days of the judges who judged Israel, nor in all the days of the kings of Israel, nor in the kings of Judah. But in the 18th year of King Josiah, the Passover was kept to Yahweh in Jerusalem. Moreover, Josiah removed those who had familiar spirits, those are demons, the wizards, the teraphim, and the idols, and all the abominations that were seen in the land of Judah and in Jerusalem, that he might confirm the words of the law which were written in the book of Hilkiah, the book that Hilkiah the priest found in Yahweh's house. There was no king like him before, who turned to Yahweh with all his heart and with all his soul and with all his might. According to all the law of Moses, there was none like him, who arose after him. Notwithstanding, Yahweh didn't turn from the fierceness of his great wrath, with which his anger burned against Judah because of all the provocation with which Manasseh had provoked him. Yahweh said, "I will also remove Judah out of my sight as I have removed Israel, and I will cast off this city which I have chosen, even Jerusalem, and the house of which I said my name shall be there." Now the rest of the acts of Josiah and all that he did, aren't they written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? In his days, Pharaoh Necho, king of Egypt, went up against the king of Assyria to the river Euphrates, and King Josiah went against him, and Pharaoh Necho killed him at Megiddo when he had seen him. His servants carried him in a chariot, dead from Megiddo, and brought him to Jerusalem, and buried him in his own tomb. The people of the land took Jehoaz, the son of Josiah, and anointed him, and made him king of his father's place. Jehoaz was 23 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 3 months in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Hamutal, the daughter of Jeremiah of Libnah. He did that which was evil in Yahweh's sight, according to all that the fathers had done. Pharaoh Necho put him in bonds at Riblah in the land of Hamath, that he might not reign in Jerusalem, and put the land to a tribute of 100 talents of silver and a talent of gold. Pharaoh Necho made Eliakim, the son of Josiah, king in the place of Josiah his father, and changed his name to Jehoiakim. But he took Jehoaz away, and he came to Egypt and died there. Jehoiakim gave the silver and the gold to Pharaoh, but he taxed the land to give the money according to the commandment of the Pharaoh. He exacted the silver and the gold of the people of the land from every one according to his assessment to give it to Pharaoh Necho. Jehoiakim was 25 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Zebidah, the daughter of Pedaiah of Rumah. He did that which was evil in Yahweh's sight according to all that his fathers had done. In his days, this is the chapter 24. That was a long chapter. Boy. In his days, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came up, and Jehoiakim became his servant 3 years. Then he turned and rebelled against him. Yahweh sent against him bands of the Chaldeans, and bands of the Syrians, and bands of the Moabites, and bands of the children of Ammon, and sent them against Judah to destroy it, according to Yahweh's word, which he spoke to his servants the prophets. Surely at the commandment of Yahweh, this came on Judah to remove them out of his sight for the sins of Manasseh, according to all that he did, and also for the innocent blood that he shed, for he filled Jerusalem with innocent blood, and Yahweh would not pardon. Now the rest of the acts of Jehoiakim and all that he did, aren't they written in the books of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? So Jehoiakim slept with his fathers, and Jehoiakim, his son, reigned in his place. The king of Egypt didn't come out of the land any more, for the king of Babylon had taken from the brook of Egypt to the rivers Euphrates, all that belonged to the king of Egypt. So all these shifting empires, right? Egypt came up. If you look at the map, they had to come up all the way up to Assyria just a minute ago and, exacted tribute from Jerusalem. And then it says that, let's see, where did I just read? The king of Egypt got pushed all the way back by the king of Babylon. So Babylon came out from, I think it's 800 miles east west, no, east of Jerusalem, maybe southeast a little bit. And so that would make them northwest of Egypt, right? So, northeast of Egypt. So where Egypt came way up, took over, I picture it like a blob, right? It kind of came up and took over Assyria, and then Babylon came out from the east and pushed them back down and rose up in power. So again, the king of Egypt didn't come out of his land anymore, for the king of Babylon had taken from the brook of Egypt to the river Euphrates all that belonged to the king of Egypt. Jehoiakim was 18 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned in Jerusalem 3 months. His mother's name was Nebushta, the daughter of Elnathan of Jerusalem. He did that which was evil in Yahweh's sight, according to all that his father had done. At that time, the servants of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came up to Jerusalem, and the city was besieged. Now, this is the beginning of the story where Jerusalem gets completely destroyed and the temple destroyed, and they're all taken to exile to Babylon for 70 years. So I think the city was besieged 3 times, and the third time was when the temple came down. And we see more of that story further on in the other books, in the prophets. So, the books of the prophets, of which, this is just for new Bible readers, there are 5 major prophets and 12 minor prophets. And these stories continue in there. And they're going to continue in the next 2 books we're reading, First and Second Chronicles. So I'm just trying to give you some setting here. So the king of Egypt gets pushed back down. Nebuchadnezzar comes in and besieges Jerusalem, and Jehoiakim, the king of Judah, went out to the king of Babylon, he and his mother and his servants and the princes and his officers, and the king of Babylon captured him in the 18th year of his reign. He carried out from there all the treasures of Yahweh's house and the treasures of the king's house, and cut in pieces all the vessels of gold which Solomon king of Israel had made in Yahweh's temple, as Yahweh had said. That is so sad. He carried away all Jerusalem, and all the princes, and all the mighty men of valor, even 10,000 captives, and all the craftsmen and the smiths. No one remained except the poorest people of the land. He carried away Jehoiakim. So this might be something you want to remember. This first siege, they took Jehoiakim and a bunch of stuff from the temple. They didn't destroy the temple yet, and they left some people there. Okay, so they took the king, Jehoiakim. And then it says all the men of might, even 7,000, and the craftsmen and the smiths 1,000, all of them strong and fit for war. Even them the king of Babylon brought captive to Babylon. I wonder if they had to walk all those miles. The king of Babylon made Mattaniah, Jehoiakim's father's brother, so Jehoiakim's uncle, king in his place, and changed his name to Zedekiah. So now Zedekiah is staying in Jerusalem to rule over that as an outpost for the king of Babylon. Zedekiah was 21 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem. See, remember when Jesus came, Rome was in charge of Jerusalem then, right? It's the same thing. In this case, Babylon was in charge. The people were oppressed under the thumb of Babylon. And that's what they did. They'd go out and take over, and that would be another one of their just an outpost. I think of the name I want there. But anyway, so they would set people in charge of it and go on and get the taxes from them and work of their hands, the produce, whatever the people produce for them. Okay, so Zedekiah was left there. Zedekiah was 21 years old when he began to reign. He reigned 11 years at Jerusalem. His mother's name was Hamutal, the daughter of Jeremiah of Libnah. He did that which was evil in Yahweh's sight, according to all that Jehoiakim had done. For through the anger of Yahweh this happened in Jerusalem and Judah, until he had cast them out of his presence. Then Zedekiah rebelled against the king of Babylon. In the 9th year of his reign, in the 10th month, in the 10th day of the month, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came, he and all his army, against Jerusalem, and encamped against it, and they built forts against and around it. So the city was besieged until the 11th year of King Zedekiah. On the 9th day of the 4th month, the famine was severe in the city, so that there was no bread for the people of the land. Then a breach was made in the city, and all the men of war fled by night by the way of the gate between the two walls, which was by the king's garden. Now the Chaldeans were against the city around it, and the king went by the way of the Arabah, but the Chaldean army pursued the king and overtook him in the plains of Jericho, and all his army was scattered from him. Then they captured the king and carried him up to the king of Babylon in Riblah, and they passed judgment on him. They killed Zedekiah's sons before his eyes, and then put Zedekiah's eyes out, bound him in fetters, and carried him to Babylon. Now in the 5th month, on the 7th day of the month, which was the 19th year of King Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, a servant of the king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem. He burned Yahweh's house, the king's house, and all the houses of Jerusalem, and every great house he burned with fire. All the army of the Chaldeans who were with the captain of the guard broke down the walls around Jerusalem. Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, carried away captive the residue of the people who were left in the city, and those who fell away, who fell to the king of Babylon, and the residue of the multitude. But the captain of the guard left some of the poorest of the land to work the vineyards and fields. The Chaldeans broke up the pillars of brass that were in Yahweh's house, and the bases and the bronze sea that was in Yahweh's house, and carried the brass pieces to Babylon. They took away the pots and shovels and snuffers and spoons and vessels of brass with which they ministered. The captain of the guard took away the fire pans, the basins, that which was gold and in gold, and that which was silver in silver, the two pillars, the one sea, the bases which Solomon had made for Yahweh's house. The brass of all the vessels was not weighed. The height of one pillar was 18 cubits, and a capital of brass was on it. The height of the capital was 3 cubits, with a network of pomegranates on the capital around it, all of brass. Excuse me. And the second pillar with its network was like these. So if you remember, if you read through me last year, the year before, or any other time, when the story plays out later in the prophets, I can't remember how it went. I think Daniel went in that first siege that we just read. We just read 3 different sieges here. Remember, Jehoiakim went in the first one, Zedekiah in the second, and then they came back and burned everything and looted and destroyed the walls in the temple. So I think Daniel went first, and he was taken up, the book of Daniel. He was taken to the administrative areas because he was educated. He was very young, him and his friends. And then I think the second one is when Ezekiel was taken, and he ended up prophesying to the exiles. And then Jeremiah was left here in Jerusalem, I think. And they were all prophesying around this time. So leading up to this, they were saying Jerusalem's going to be destroyed. And some of the other false prophets were saying, no, we'll be fine. Nothing's going to happen. And what God was saying during that time was, go with the Babylonians. Don't fight them. Don't go to Egypt. Remember, Egypt was, to my mind, was kind of like America. It was their safe place. He said, don't go there. And there was a reason, because later Babylon invaded Egypt. So I think I've got all this part of the storyline pieced together so far. So I'm sure, I know there's historians that have this way better than me. I'm just trying to give you a little picture here. So during this, what's left out of the story we're reading today, is these prophets kept warning them, and then now here it comes. And I always liken it to America or maybe other countries where, I picture us saying, this is America. Nothing's going to happen to us. We've always felt strong, protected. I can imagine them at the time here in Jerusalem saying, it's God's temple. I mean, he saved us out of Egypt. He's the one that built the temple. This is Yahweh, the God of Israel. He's not going to let it fall to the Babylonians. He's always protected us. They're not hearing from God. They're going on their own assumptions. And the ones that were really hearing from God was saying, look, you're going to have to go in exile. And if you will just go with them, you'll be okay. Don't fight them. And don't go to Egypt. And there were people that didn't listen, and they paid the price for it. But we see some of that in further stories further on. So let me see where I left off here. Almost done. The captain of the guard took Sarai, the chief priest, Zephaniah, the second priest, and the three keepers of the threshold, and out of the city he took an officer who was set over the men of war, and 5 men of those who saw the king's face, who were found in the city, and the scribe, the captain of the army, who mustered the people of the land, and 60 men of the people of the land who were found in the city. Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, took them and brought them to the king of Babylon in Riblah. The king of Babylon attacked them and put them to death at Riblah in the land of Hamath. So Judah was carried away captive out of his land. As for the people who were left in the land of Judah, whom Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, had left, even over them he made Gedaliah, the son of Ahikam, the son of Shaphan, governor. Now when all the captains of the forces, they and their men, heard that the king of Babylon had made Gedaliah governor, they came to Gedaliah in Mitzvah, even Ishmael the son of Nethaniah, and Johanan the son of Kiriah, and Seraiah, Seraiah, the son of Tanhumeth the Netophathite, and Jaazaniah the son of Maacathite, they and their men. Gedaliah swore to them and to their men, and said to them, Don't be afraid because of the servants of the Chaldeans. Dwell in the land and serve the king of Babylon, and it will be well with you. But in the 7th month, Ishmael the son of Nethaniah, the son of Elishama, of the royal offspring, came, and 10 men with him, and struck Gedaliah so that he died, with the Jews and the Chaldeans that were with him at Mitzvah. All the people, both small and great, and the captains of the forces arose and came to Egypt, for they were afraid of the Chaldeans. See, they had been told not to do that by God. In the 37th year of the captivity of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, in the 12th month, on the 27th day of the month, Evil-Merodach, king of Babylon, in the year that he began to reign, lifted up the head of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, out of the prison, and he spoke kindly to him, and set his throne above the throne of the kings who were with him in Babylon, and changed his prison garments. Jehoiakim ate bread before him continually all the days of his life, and for his allowance there was a continual allowance given him from the king, every day a portion, all the days of his life. So there's yet another one who was given a retirement account. Remember that? I've talked about 4 times in the last month. So there's another instance where someone was taken care of for the rest of their life. So that's the end of today's reading. Feel free to comment if you'd like. And that's it. I'll see you tomorrow. God bless you.